Picking up where we left off in part one, today we are covering part two of our Texas Killing Fields three-part series. We'll be going in more of a chronological order compared to part one, starting with Brenda K. Jones, the first body found in the 70s, discussing a couple and a missing baby, and ending with a case that may have been solved after being cold for 40 years. Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by our Table of Disappointment. This is How They Got Away, the show where we discuss the unsatisfying endings to your favorite unsolved or unpunished true crime and corporate greed stories. I'm your host for today, Annalise. I am here with our co-host.
It's Kelsey. I remembered how dark this episode was just before we hit record, and I'm prepared.
And here with our guest today, who wasn't here for part one.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Anna. After 50 bajillion years, I was finally let out of my enrichment corner, and I'm back, which I'm also getting enriched, but in a different way.
Containment.
I have currently breached containment. You can't see me, but I am saluting.
All right. So for Anna, I'm going to remind us of our setting. So this is a 25-acre plot of land that's owned by a petrol company by what is Calder Road. And there's a few houses and trailers in some part of it, but overall, this is a very rural area. There's not really much going on here. There's some bodies of water. There's like a dirt dead-end road, and there's really not much going on here besides some trees. And so it's right off Interstate 45. Beyond that, there isn't much activity, and it has been called the perfect place to dump a body. In our last episode, we discussed Edward Bell, who is a man who was convicted of killing another man after flashing some women. He was on Texas's Most Wanted for a while, and he, in prison, started writing letters and confessed to killing 11 girls. He gave descriptions and names for some, but not all. And a majority of these girls were linked to or directly named as girls who had shown up in the Texas killing fields.
I love when they say, like, oh, this guy is America's most wanted, Texas's most wanted, because, like, the reality is no one wants you, sir.
So we're going to talk today a little bit more in chronological order. A lot of the 11 were centered around the similar time in the 70s. So we have a couple of victims that we are going to discuss who are not part of the 11 today. And I'll kind of shout out where they're kind of in the order, which is awful to say that there is enough to be in order in this place. But that is kind of how we're going to run through it today. Brenda K. Jones, 14, was the first girl found in the killing fields on July 2nd, 1971. She had been walking to her aunt's house on July 1st in Galveston, Texas. When she didn't arrive, her aunt reported her missing. Her body was found in Galveston Bay near Interstate 45. She was nude, had been tied up, and died of strangulation, according to one of the sources. There is some discrepancies between some of them, like Wiki, which I know is not a reliable source, but might as well call it out, stated that she had a sock lodged in her mouth and had died from a head wound. One of her family members, Phyllis Southern, believes that she may have been killed by Edward Bell, the focus of our first episode, but it's not widely believed. Beyond that, I have no further details.
And for Anna, who isn't here, we kind of had a discussion about the 11, what ones we kind of thought could maybe be attributed to Bell, or at least one person. And I believe a lot of the patterns we saw there were found in a state of undress. Although most of those, I think, were shot versus strangled, if I recall it correctly. So definitely some similarities, but also, unfortunately, bound and nude is not very unique when it comes to killers because people are fucked up.
Yeah, unfortunately. Kind of yucky.
It is. So, in between Brenda and the next victim, Allison Craven, or Craven, I'm not positive how to say her name, but I've been saying, we could say Craven. There were many of the 11 who went to heaven, with Colette being the first one found in November 1971. So, in the timeline of this, Allison is actually the 8th body found.
Oh,
I
jeez.
think I might have said this last episode, but they really just need to do annual sweeps in this fucking exit field.
On November 9th, 1971, Allison's mother had stepped out to run errands and left her 12-year-old daughter at their Houston apartment. When she came back, Allison was
Oh
gone.
no. Oh my god.
That's like a very normal age for you to leave your kid home alone for like an hour. They need that like sense of independence.
It's their time for enrichment to do whatever they want for an hour.
And that's creepy too, because like whoever took her probably knew or was watching and knew she was alone.
That's yuck. Leave little girls alone, and women. Just leave females alone. Leave them alone.
2 hands and some teeth, so hand bones really, and some teeth, would be found 3 months later in the field, and that would be later identified as Allison's.
Ooh.
But the rest of her wasn't found until February 25th, 1972. She was found near Interstate 45 in Pearland, Texas. She was 12 miles away from home,
Oh.
and I have no further evidence on her
That's
case
gotta be haunting.
or
The
details.
kid wasn't even far.
So
Okay.
hands and teeth were found in one location, and the breast was in another. That's
That definitely speaks to somebody who probably has a record or at least is somewhat aware of some forensic techniques of identification. The hands looking for fingerprints, the teeth for dental records. Just the teeth, not the jawbone or anything. So they pulled her teeth out for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, dude. How nice. Thank you for that. But that also says to me, like, something about that doesn't seem very random to me, because if you're like a very paranoid serial killer, maybe you would do that, but that's a lot of effort. That sounds more like, oh, if this person is identified, I'm going to be named.
Yeah.
And coupled with waiting until like the 1 hour, 2 hours where the mom was out for the day, which kind of points to them watching, kind of says something, I feel like, about a friend.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of when you're saying being tied back and recognized. It makes me think of the Lady of the Dunes and how she had some teeth taken out and her hands were like messed with, things that would identify her, and then she went unidentified for so long. And then it really seems like her husband was the one who had done it, now that we know who it is or who she is.
It's crazy just like how little it takes sometimes for someone to become unidentified, just missing a couple key and fingerprints and they're gone. And even then, like if you think about it, like, the average person's fingerprints are not in a system.
So in between Allison and the 10th victim, who was found, Suzanne Bowers, was Kimberly Pitchford, who we covered in the 11. So keep in mind that there were 9 victims found between July 1971 and January 1973.
Was there like a concerted body recovery effort at this time, or was it just people were walking through these woods and just kept stumbling onto body parts?
What is the woods?
A lot of them were people just stumbling on a body part. Some of them were the police that found one, and then within the same area, they'd find another or 2. But again, this is 25 acres of really like forested with ponds. There's like a lot of nature where you could be obscured, and people don't really go through it that much.
Clearly enough, finding all these bodies in like a year and a half.
I mean, yeah. But still, No one's witnessing
That's true.
anything, I guess is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
It's like you'll find things, but seeing the deed essentially be committed or dumping the body, that's a whole other thing. Because that's a lot of land, question mark. I'm trying to have a visual here
It's a lot of land.
mentally. Yeah, that's a
It
big
is.
amount of
It is a
land,
lot.
so they're trying.
Wait, hang on.
Looks like
How many 5 acre 0.3 square mile? Oh, that's not actually, that can't be. Maybe it is. That wasn't as helpful of a metric as I thought. Oh, okay, so 40 acres is a quarter mile by a quarter mile. With that information, well, but it almost speaks to like maybe it speaks less about people just being very lucky and stumbling on the few bodies that are in here, and speaks more about how many bodies there could be here that you just statistically are going to come across one.
So between Kimberly and Suzanne, there was actually 6 years. So we are jumping to 1979.
I have to wonder if
Oh.
after 9 remains were discovered in the same area in a year and a half, if people cumulatively were like, hey, maybe we should quit hanging out there for a little bit. And then after 6 years, people were like, well, I'm sure they found all the bodies. It just was one weirdo or whatever, and then went back and somebody found a body and they're like, ah, shit.
Suzanne Bowers, the 10th found, was also 12 years old. She was a 7th grader at the time. Suzanne was taken in the 3 minutes that she was alone walking back from her grandmother's house at 10:45 a.m. to grab a swimsuit so she could go to the beach.
The fact that so many of them are in early to mid teens, but also like not all of the like killing methods match. It's weird that the age range and the gender of most of the victims, of course we haven't covered them all yet, but the 11 and the ones we've covered so far here, it's weird that they're all so close in age. Like, if it was just like a area that multiple people just saw and thought, yeah, that's a great place to dump a body, no one would ever find it. I feel like you would see more of a diversity in victim type. It's weird to me that there are like, how many creeps are there in this one area that know about this like one like forest? That's like weird to me. I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't know what that is, but it's weird. Is there like a pedophiles and serial killers Reddit post? Like, what is this? Like, why are only the people who are really disgusting weirdos and like little girls dumping bodies here? Weird to me.
Yuck.
Just a little yuck. That's in the episode on Elise if you keep nothing else.
Disgusting.
Suzanne wouldn't be found until 2 years later on March 25th, 1979. She was in Altaloma, Texas, a little over 18 miles from her home. She had multiple gunshot wounds to her skull, but it is uncertain whether or not these were the killing wounds. There was nothing reported around the skeletal, or there was nothing found at the scene around the skeletal remains that could give any clues. So her case is also unsolved.
So with the distance is very short. So clearly whoever is doing this is not clearly, I don't fucking know. But I would guess that whoever is doing this is not keeping them for any significant length of time. It kind of goes to that, like the first 24 hours of a kidnapping are the most crucial because after that, the chances of survival dip dramatically. It sounds like the person who's doing this, kidnapping them, do whatever nasty, disgusting thing they get off on for this, and then is dumping them. And it sounds like, I mean, there are a lot of reasons there couldn't be anything at a crime scene. Sometimes there just isn't anything at the crime scene. Like we saw with Jane Marie, but like it sounds more like he's killing them somewhere else or in a car and then dumping their bodies, which makes sense because to bring somebody out into the woods, you can only bring them in the car so far. I assume kidnapped by car. That makes no sense. And then there's a little bit of risk involved in trying to control somebody in thick woods.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute, hang on.
It feels like a lot of this is
Because we've been saying, like, no one is seeing anything. No one is witnessing any body dumps, but there's clearly a lot of body dumps, and there's clearly a good bit of activity in this forest. So are they killing these girls and then waiting until night to dump them? Or do they know of some road nobody knows about? How are you getting away with this?
Again, it is a huge bit of land, so they can
I
do
guess, but like that's
anything
kind of a
in that
huge
space.
risk. Especially after like multiple bodies have been found. Clearly there's people walking around in these woods.
That's true.
I think mostly when people come to these woods, they're hunting or fishing. So it's not like it's like consistent a lot of foot traffic. And some of them
That's true.
were literally, in Anna in the last one of them, a person's dog was running around in the woods, grabbed a
Oh, Lord.
hand
What about that?
and brought it back home to its
Not
owner.
the baby! No! I say baby,
I
but I
have
don't know
Sadie
how
run
old
around
this
in the
So
dog
woods
some of this is like
sometimes.
people.
I would shit myself if she just came back with a hand bone.
Oh my god, Fido, what you find? Oh shit, a hand.
For a lot of these, it's like people are fishing and they come across it. People are with an animal and the animal smells it out. It's not like, it's a lot of different ways they're being found. It's not like every time someone's just walking in the woods, something is found.
I wonder if there's any pattern between when popular hunting seasons for the area are and when these killings are happening.
I did see someone. Okay, so the Netflix documentary on this that I'll talk about for a little bit more in part 3, because they really cover a couple of cases that's more in the 80s, and we're kind of in the 70s right now. This one guy was saying that he like went out into the killing field. He shot his gun 3 times, and there was like no reaction from anywhere. And so, yeah, it seems like this is a kind of like a hunting area where people are like, oh, the guns are shooting off. That's not that weird. Or maybe they have neighbors who practice shooting in the area. So they're like, a gun noise is not that weird.
I don't want to be reductive, but it is Texas. But also, like, I've heard shot, like, even where we
She's
live, where
right.
hunting's not very common, I've heard, like, very, very distant shots, and I feel like sounds like hunting.
Yeah.
I could see that. But also, like, what reaction were you expecting? Like, you expecting people to come out and start shouting? Like, that's such a wild thing to just do.
But it really does, if you're thinking about it, if someone hears a gunshot, they're not really going to react.
Yeah.
Definitely with the ones who have gunshot wounds, maybe they are bringing them out to the woods to kill them.
I don't know. It feels like for some of these, it was definitely they came to the area and then dumped. I really hate saying that, but that's really the best way to describe it.
But that's what gets me about it again, because it's like, again, it seems to be a very similar victim type, but also the modus operandi seem to diverge enough that it makes me question if it's the same person. So it's weird. Why are all you creeps dumping bodies?
It is weird. It could also be not only, I mean, these methods, some of them are different. Some of them are strangulation, some are shooting. So it could be different people. It could be copycats. It could be, there's a lot of things that could be happening here. But the case that I'm going to get into now, it's a bit of a shift from what we've been talking about. It's a bit of a shift in, I hate to say it's the style, as well as who the victims are. And we do have more details on this case.
Okay.
So Tina Gail Klaus, 17, and Harold Dean Klaus Jr., who went by Dean, 20, were the 13th and 14th bodies found in the killing fields. The two had met and fell in love in 1979. Tina's brother had been dating Dean's sister, so naturally their paths crossed. Tina was 15 at the time, and by June 25th of that year, the two had been married, and a year later, on January 24th, they had their daughter, Holly Marie Klaus.
Hang on. Got married in June, had their baby in January. I hear a shotgun wedding in the works. Good for them. Good for them. I don't want to say good for them because, like, yeah, I'm happy for them, but also I know how this ends. I don't want to get attached.
Good for them, tentatively. Tentatively.
They're very young at this time. They're 15 and 18
Ooh,
at this
wow.
time.
Mm.
It was the 70s. It was the 70s.
It was the 70s. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
In 1980, the family packed up and moved from Volusia County, Florida, to Louisville, Texas, so Harold could work at D.R. Horton as a carpenter. At the time, there was a big construction boom in the area, so it made sense to go where the opportunities were. The couple would send letters back home until October of that year, so October of 1980, when their families would receive the last
I
one.
have heard of this case. It sounds familiar.
It's been in the news recently, and an ABC 2020 was recently released on it.
I'm gonna reserve what I
Okay,
my
so
thoughts
I'll-
until you finish because I may be taking a completely different case.
On January 12th, 1981, a dog came upon the couple's remains in the woods 250 miles away from their home near Greens Bayou. The dog had taken an arm back home to his owner, which prompted a search of the woods.
Can you
An
hang
arm.
on before we get any further? Can you imagine? I'm imagining. I don't know what kind of dog this is, but I'm imagining like a 6-7-year-old beagle type dog. You're like, go on, Fido, go run in the woods, have a good time. It's Texas. This is 70s. I don't need to attend you at all. And then your dog has a great time gallivanting in the woods. And then he comes back to the door, does that little like dog scratch thing at the door, and goes, there's my beloved dog Fido. I'm so happy to see him. It's been a couple of hours. And then you open the door and he has a handbook. There are some bones in the human body I feel like are not immediately identifiable. The hand is up there. It's pretty obvious that it's a human being's hand. And you just have to be like, Fido, what have you done?
I like you say, Fido, what have you done? And like mentally, my old brain is like, oh, it's like the dog bringing it home. But it also kind of says like, Fido, why did you kill this person? Fido, how could you? You are my trusted beagle. You are my little guy. How does that audio go? My sweet cheese, my soldier boy. That whole audio.
Boy.
You know what I mean.
He's my button
My
soldier.
hometown boy. My sweet cheese. How could you,
I
Fido?
feel like a lot
I like
of
a picture
questions
of
run through your
Fido.
mind if your dog brings a dead human body part to your door. One of
I
them
should
has
hope
got
so.
to be, did my dog kill this person? Before you like rationality takes hold and you realize, no, that's old. There's no way.
Did my dog do that?
You just let your dog out for hours. He's been unattended. Who knows what Fido's up?
He brought you a souvenir.
I know. I think can we just take a moment to think of it from Fido's perspective? He thought he found a really cool thing and was like, do you know who would love this? My owner. Because they have human hands. They would love this human hand. You know,
Mom, Dad,
you
look
know,
what I
he was so
found!
proud to show his thing, and it was such a horrifying thing. Mommy, why are you screaming? I brought you a present.
I brought home the bacon. Literally.
Okay.
We're gonna eat tonight.
All right. Reeling it back,
Right, we have to be
reeling it
serious.
back
We have to
in.
be serious. This is.
Serious.
We have to be normal.
Okay. So the police searched the woods, and what they found was unsettling to say the least. They found Dean tied up, gagged, and beaten to death, while Tina had been strangled. Left with their bodies was a bloody towel. They had been dead for at least a week. The couple were not identified at the time. It was speculated that Tina may have been attacked first and that Dean had tried to protect her. Some on the county forensic anthropology team had dubbed them Romeo and Juliet, but they were more widely known as the Harris County Does.
Okay, I have heard of this one. Oh my God, though. That means that when the hand, I was imagining like a dirt covered hand, like kind of desiccated and withered. But no, that would have been still pretty fleshy. I'm also glad we had that little moment of levity before Annalise brought us down to that level. Oh my God. Because that's not even just the tying up and her being strangled. Maybe I'm reading into it, but says to me that he may, obviously, he's the stronger of the two, so there's a little bit of incapacitating him to avoid the threat, but also, did they make him watch them kill her? Because why would you just tie him up? Why wouldn't you just like kill him? You know what I'm saying?
Dean's family didn't know about any of this, obviously, since they were not identified. Instead, the letters they had been receiving just stopped. And then, a few months later, they received a call from someone in Los Angeles.
Yes, I have heard of this one. It's so weird.
The lady had the couple's car, a 1978 Burgundy AMC Concorde, and wanted $1,000 in return for it. When the family went to get the car, a woman named Sister Susan was there along with several others. She claimed the couple had joined a religious group and were cutting off contact.
This was already like months after they had died.
Sister Susan isn't lying against the word of God. Hmm.
Yeah, I'll get to Sister Susan in a minute, but can we just that because you like they're a young couple settling in an area, they have a baby. At first, I'm sure you were like, oh, they're busy. They're so busy. They're
Mhm.
living their young people lives. They're trying to establish roots in the new community. You know, they don't have time to be writing us letters all the time. Maybe it hurt a little bit as the months ticked by, but you know, you're like, oh, they're fine. Why would you assume they're not fine? And then you get a call from a lady like, hey, I have your kid's car. She had to have some kind of identifying information to be like, oh, it's this person's car. Obviously, she had their cars. And she's calling from fucking Los Angeles. You're like, why do you have my child's car in Los Angeles? They're in Texas with their wife and their child.
Dean had a past affiliation with the Jesus People movement when he was 17. The people in this movement were sometimes referred to as Jesus freaks. So this wasn't entirely implausible, but Donna Castaneda, Dean's mother, reported them missing anyways. It was like, okay, I'm not going to believe that this is what's happening right now. I'm going to report them missing.
Also, he was 17. We all get into weird crowds at 17.
However, due to Dean's past affiliation, the police believed that the couple had joined the cult and didn't investigate any further.
I mean, I get it. But also,
Yuck.
you couldn't have made a couple phone calls, just made sure? Just checked in? Couldn't have done it?
For so long, this is all that was done and all that we had. It would take 40 years until Identifiers International used a genetic genealogy to identify the unidentified bodies and for Donna to get some kind of answer. So now we ask, where's the baby? Where's Holly? Because she wasn't found with her parents.
And that's so extra fucked because that means that whoever took them probably had her with them when they did whatever they did to the parents. Unless they like when would you have dropped her off, you know?
So, with her parents assumed to be in a cult and with no indication that the Harris County Does had a child, she was not searched for 40 years. The question of where she wasn't answered until last year. So in 2022, she was found alive in Oklahoma, and she is now 43.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine me calling you, emailing you? No one's coming to the door. It's 2022 and being like, hey, this is gonna sound crazy, but your real parents are dead, and you know, you were kidnapped, and that's how you got where you are now. You want to chat about it?
So, Holly was dropped off at an Arizona church by two women from a nomadic religious group in November 1980.
When did her parents go? When were they killed?
Holly was later adopted by the pastor, and he had come to the door to receive the baby and had met the two women and apparently met Tina, Holly's mother.
Okay. But when we're figuring this all out, I just want to point out, when we're figuring this all out, it was 40 years later. So there is a little bit. I can't even remember 3 days ago with that level of clarity about someone I met for a total of 10 minutes. Just write it out.
According to information we have now, Dean and Tina had rejoined Jesus People, and as part of joining, many were encouraged to give up their children or leave them in family in order to travel and spread God's word. Many, including the family, believed that the couple were killed for trying to leave the cult. Although members who are still part of the group from that time that Tina and Dean were part of it claim that it's not likely, and there are people who remembered them in the cult at the time. The group says that they are peaceful, that this is not something that would have happened.
On the one hand, if it's multiple people today, are these like ex-members or still members?
Current members.
Because that could be true. It could be 100% true. It could also be a story everybody was coached in case anybody asked any questions about the young couple that was found dead in the Texas killing fields. So it's hard to, because like on the one hand, it's a trust but verify kind of thing, but on the other hand, you cannot verify it. It's just like their word.
So as of today, the case of Holly's parents' death is still unsolved. The family believes, and Holly believes, that they were killed as a result of the cult members. I do want to give a little expert about the family and her. When it was found out, they had the pastor was very supportive. Her man who raised her, essentially her father. At one point, they went down to Florida to try and get her birth certificate, but her birth certificate was sealed. So they couldn't get information about her because he had legally adopted her. Apparently from Tina, there was a signature sign off. And so everything was sealed as a closed adoption.
Wait, so Florida has like a record of a signed and notarized. Those things have to be notarized. So there had to have been at least one other person. Like they have this record somewhere?
They have that it was a sealed birth certificate. I'm not sure about any other records that they have. The ABC 2020, they talk about this a bit, but I'm not sure about the full logistics, and I haven't seen a lot of articles about it yet. But from my understanding, it was like a legal adoption of her. That's why she's still named Holly, because got the name. She had it before. She still had it. She was a baby. She wouldn't have remembered her name.
Yeah.
So he literally got it from them. And so, but I do want to say that she was able to connect with her family over Zoom and then was actually able to go and meet them. Her grandmother, Dean's mother, so they're both very religious, both Holly and her grandmother. And so that she called her grandmother a praying warrior. And that she had, prayed to God, and this has happened, and she got to meet her grandmother a couple of months before her grandmother passed.
Wow, that is the kind of thing that if you're looking up all this information and investigating, if you find this woman, you find her alive, I feel like for me, there's a certain question if you see this person who's living their life, they're happy, do you even say? Because her life has to have been completely upside down. But also, you would want to know because that's your life. But also, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. So wait, her adoption, a legal adoption, took place in where?
So it took place in Arizona. So she was handed over there, but I guess her birth records were then sealed at the time. So some kind of administrative thing had to happen in the background because when they went to
No,
go
that happens sometimes.
like
Okay.
get information about her, they
That can
couldn't get
happen.
it.
Some states have like something happens during an adoption that like seals the original records so that like the original family can remain
Yeah.
anonymous. So it must have happened in Arizona, and they have systems so the states could talk to one another. So the Arizona
Yeah.
must have contacted Florida and been like, "Hey, she's been adopted. You know, do what you have to do," and then they sealed the records. But okay, so that happened in Arizona in 1980. You were saying?
So November 1980 is when she was found, or when she was
Okay,
dropped
and
off.
when were the parents found?
Yeah, November 1980. The parents were found January 12th, 1981.
Oh my god. So she gave away her child 2 months before they were. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, they said that the body had likely been there for a month, I
They
think
said a
they said.
week?
God, I'm looking. Oh, yeah, for at
Me
least
too.
a week. Yeah, so
Okay.
not that long.
So okay, so a couple of things. Maybe she gave away her child under duress, and then they tried to get her to do something, get them to do something else, and they were or brought all the way back to Texas to be killed. That's a long way to bring someone if they immediately were like, I don't want to give away my child. I don't want to. And I feel like the priest probably would have picked up on that to sit through long enough to go through all of the paperwork of adoption, meet this kid, decide to adopt the kid. You would never pick up. I mean, yeah, the mom's probably going to have some complicated emotions.
Well, essentially, what happened is that Tina forfeited her rights, and then it wasn't a full processed adoption. I think he said for like a month. He was like waiting to see if there was going to be like Tina would come back regretting it. Yeah, so he kind of like left it open for a little while, just to see if Tina would come back, and she didn't. So there was,
really fair of him.
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy, and honestly, this is being told by a pastor of what happened 40 years ago. So
okay, no, that makes sense though.
But yeah.
Okay, so maybe like she and Dean regretted it, and a couple months later we're like, no, like I can't. We have to leave. We have to go get her, and then they were killed as the result of that. They're just like, what?
It's weird. It's sketchy.
So it sounds like though that she at least semi-willingly gave away their child. And then something happened within like a month and a half, 2 months, and then they were both killed in Texas. Okay.
I do want to say that Holly, I haven't read the book, but Holly herself, baby Holly, did write a book called Finding Baby Holly about all of this.
That's got to be all kinds of issues. Like you're just be like, she's like 40s now. Somebody like, hey,
43, yeah.
I know you were adopted, and you've probably come to terms with that as like an adult, but also not only were you adopted, but your parents were actually brutally murdered and may or may not have been given away under duress, and no one even knew you existed or were missing for many, many, many years. Anyway, go back to your life. That is crazy to find out so late.
So anyone who is interested about hearing from Holly herself, from the pastor, and from the family, I would recommend watching the ABC 2020 on this case. I watched it after I kind of wrote this section and kind of inserted pieces that I heard from it, but they do a little more of a comprehensive look at the pastor and Holly's side of what happened.
I do want to say, like, I don't think anyone was thinking it, but for the record, I don't think the pastor did anything wrong here or like was involved. I think he was just like found a child, like a woman came and abandoned a child. That happens at churches. That's not like crazy. And then he fell in love with this little girl, and then probably there were a couple of months where he was like, no, can't get attached because the mom might come back. I can't get attached here. And then after a couple of months, unbeknownst to him, the parents have died horribly. And now they, in some way, all these events, as horrible as they are, brought a little family together. And it's so nice that, once again, other events came together just so that she could meet her grandmother before she passed. Because this could have gone forever. She could have gone her entire life without ever knowing that.
And it was really sweet to see her, like, aunts and uncles being like, oh, you look just like Tina. You have, like, this of Dean. Like, she got to know, you know, that side of her family. She has a whole family that she didn't know about.
I feel
That is pretty nice.
That wanted her and love her, even though they haven't seen her in
feel
40
that
years.
I feel really bad for Holly, who had a life stolen,
Yeah.
but also I feel, and of course for Dean and Tina, who literally had a life stolen, but also almost worse for the family, who at first didn't even know anything was wrong, and for years just didn't know what had happened. And then just like to hope that your children are in a cult somewhere doing something, and that's hoping they're safe.
So we're going to move on from this case to discuss a few more. But that is I think the bright spot of this episode is that baby Holly was alive and found and got to reunite with her family.
I definitely heard of this case. I think
So
I
we're
heard of
gonna
it
move on.
during the update, and I didn't realize it was part of this whole connected Texas Philly deal. I could see what you were saying. I remember you were talking about researching this case, and you were like, I am in the rabbit hole right now, and I get it now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You are going deep. You're so brave for that.
So
You're so brave.
the 15th victim found was Michelle Garvey. Michelle Garvey was 15 when she disappeared on June 1982 from her home in New London, Connecticut.
Oh my lord! I was about to say back to the status quo, but Connecticut.
As per usual, the police had labeled her a runaway.
I believe I ranted about that last episode, so I will rant. But you know my feelings about that. I would punch several of Connecticut's finest in the fucking face, and that's all I would say on that matter.
Michelle would not be found and identified until 2014 when her remains were positively identified thanks to DNA testing after the Harris County and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reached out to Connecticut police. So essentially they had found this body before. It was unidentified for a really long time. And then 2014, they finally connected it. According to one article, an internet sleuth, Polly Penwell, actually made the connection. She was going through the National Missing and Unidentified Person systems and pulled up both lists to try and find matches. And so she would look at kind of the composites and compare them to real life pictures and just scroll to see if she could make any kind of connection that would help. In narrowing down the results, she came across Michelle, and once she put the real photo next to the composite, she was certain. She immediately emailed Harris County Police. The police never stated that Polly Penwell was behind the discovery. The only information we have is that they requested DNA.
Yeah, because that's a fucking embarrassment on their side. That's an embarrassment. Not to diss Penny, she is going for it. But the fact that nobody is doing that, like, this is one of the places where I think AI would be so helpful. Of like just going, because the magnitude of these databases, the fact that she managed to find a composite that matched a person in the thousands of composites and thousands of missing, incredible. But like AI could be like, here you go. May not be super accurate, but it is so much. It's a starting place. Somebody get on that.
Somebody get on off point.
There probably is something about that. They're just maybe working on it. I know there's something. It's not the same thing, but I know that there is technically sort of AI where it's like you're trying to look for a piece of art, for example, or an image, and you're like, hey, where's the original source for that? And you can put like the link of the image or upload the file onto this website, and it'll be like, here are the sources that this image is from. So it's like, it's kind of getting there. Don't know about missing people. I will assume that they're doing something about it. I wish people actually use AI for useful things instead of trying to profit and steal money from artists.
Not late space capitalism.
That's a totally different story.
Yeah, there's plenty of examples of facial recognition AI. Like, the technology is here. It just needs to be combined by.
So, according to the article I read, Polly has an email exchange with Sharon Derrick, a Harris County forensic anthropologist, which like confirms that she did do this. So, either way, the police have never publicly stated that she helped, but she has her story. So, this prior to the ID of Michelle, she was one of the many nameless victims in the Texas killing fields. Her body had been found on June 1st, 1982.
And when did she go missing?
She went missing from her home in June 1982 from New London, Connecticut. Like, literally was found. Oh, you know what?
I was going to say,
I
wait a
think
minute.
this literally says she was found the same day. So I don't
That could not
know.
be right. I guess maybe.
I will say a lot of these sources are not super exact.
Okay, so let's be generous and say within the same month.
It could also be that she disappeared around June, and that could have been the day before June 1st, and so this was like a day later or so. Either way, she was found very quickly.
She somehow made it from Connecticut to Texas, either of her own will or duress. I really don't have evidence to say one way or the other, although it sounds like, I don't know, we don't really have information about this girl. Like, I don't want to say she was a runaway because I don't know that. Because I don't investigate these things. That's not my job, Connecticut police. But, like, you know, somehow she made it from Connecticut to Texas and then very quickly was killed, which I think says to me kidnapping more likely. But then why would you kidnap someone all the way in Connecticut and bring them all the way down to Texas just to kill them? That's weird.
I will say that there are multiple cases of people who are highway killers.
True.
Who will pick up someone in one place and
That's
then
true.
drive for a long distance and dump them in another place and then keep going. This is along Interstate 45. And so there is kind of like a busier road that they could have just driven down and dumped in the spot.
There is actually it looks like a direct I-81 all the way down from Connecticut to Texas. So it's you could pick someone up along the highway in Connecticut and definitely get to Texas and then transfer to the 845. Very doable, I would say.
So Michelle had been sexually assaulted, strangled to death, and then her body was brought to the fields. She was found with some clothes on, including her brown shirt, which featured an embroidery of a horse on the pocket, which police had hoped someone would recognize. Michelle had been buried, so actually like dug into the ground buried, next to Tina and Dean Klaus, who were also unidentified at the time.
Oh my god.
So she was found in the same area
Like
as
right
them.
next to?
They say next to. I would just venture to say that it is feet away.
Within like a very small
Wait
radius.
a minute.
Oh my god.
Okay, so wait. They were
That is-
found in January. Of what year? 81? Okay.
Yes.
So and this is June of 82, correct?
So they found them like right in the area that Tina and Dean were found.
Okay. So they were, just be clear, they were not there. They had already been found
At the same time, no.
And then a few months later, somebody buried and disposed of the remains of this girl, of Michelle, here.
Like over a year later.
Like a 0.3 by 0.3 of a square mile square. Out of all the other places you could have dumped somebody. A coincidence? Maybe. Stranger things have happened. I feel like it throws a bit of a wrench in the Tina and Dean thing. Because if the cult did kill them, why would they kill Michelle? It's weird.
It can also be just completely
It could be
unrelated
unrelated.
and
That's what I'm
just
saying.
happened
It's
to
like
be.
it's hard to say. I mean, honestly, the amount of bodies
It
that
is.
are apparently in this 25 acres could be a total coincidence.
Yeah.
So sadly, I have no further information on Michelle's case due to the amount of time that she was left unidentified, and by the fact that she traveled such a distance, it's likely that we're not really going to get an answer.
That's so sad, especially hearing the detail about an embroidered horse
I know,
shirt.
she's
I
like
feel like
15
that's
in the
a
horse
huge
girl.
thing? Question mark?
Well, that's enough to identify her, but it doesn't really
Oh my
like.
god.
There were no probably no security cameras where she was at the time. It sounds like we don't even really have information about her abduction.
Oh, for sure.
Jeez.
That's so sad. Well, all of these
What
are
I
sad, but I'm
find
like,
really
oh man.
sad
Oh
is how
man, it
little
just gets
details we
worse.
have on so many of these.
Honestly, like literally, there's only like, oh, found this day, maybe. Judging by this case, clearly not all of those were well kept records. State
Mhm.
of the body. That's about it. Maybe an identification after 20 odd years, 40 odd years.
God.
So I'm going to be moving on to our final case for part two, and we'll be discussing the 16th victim found. Suzanne Lead Aids, 19, was leaving her job as a cocktail waitress at Charlie's Bar in Nassau Bay around 4:30 p.m. August 30th, 1983. She was last seen with a white man in a cowboy
That
hat.
could be anyone. This is
It was
Texas.
only
That's the least helpful description I've ever heard. A white man with a cowboy hat in Texas? What the fuck? That's nothing. That's nothing. You might as well tell me she was talking to generic white man number 6. Like, that's so unhelpful. I feel like I'm dissing some witness who like was trying to be helpful. I'm sure they didn't realize the significance at the time, but like what? Brown hair, black hair, blonde hair, nothing? Sorry. Go on.
Goofy.
It was only one day later when her body was found by a driver along the intersection of NASA Road 1 and Elam Street. She was naked, covered with bruises on her face and back. She had been sexually assaulted and had been strangled with a bodysuit that she had been wearing.
Okay, so a little bit older than some of the other victims seen, but pretty similar MO in terms of sexual assault, state of undress, and being found. We're seeing a lot of gunshot wounds and strangulation, but also those are, like I said earlier, pretty common methods of murder. It's not really very identifying killer. And to be honest, it sounds like they just threw her out of the car, like just pushed her out of the car and kept driving. Like I question if she was strangled to death. We're sure she didn't like die of her injuries, like after she got pushed in the car.
Yeah.
So they abducted her, or maybe got her into a car willingly, beat the shit out of her, sexually assaulted her, strangled her, and then just pushed her. Didn't even try to hide it. Sounds like just pushed her out of the car and then drove away. The level of audacity to be like, I won't get caught for this. I won't get punished for this. No one will see this. Gone. And also, they were kind of right because we don't know who the fuck did this, did we? Annalise, go on. Tell me we don't know who did this because white man in a cowboy hat is so specific. Surely we found this man. Sorry, go on.
So another detail is her car was found in a lot nearby, so it had been moved.
That's weird. Like he took her keys and just kind of moved her car a little bit. What does that even do? Why not just?
It also makes me question whether or not he used her car when dumping the body, because it was found nearby in a
So
lot.
like he got her into her car, through some means, did all of that, pushed her out of the vehicle. I hate that part. I really hate that part. Like just shoved her out of the car, like throwing a soda cup out of the window before you get to the highway. Not that I do it. Like trash. Like that gets me. Then drove probably to where his car was, and then just got into his car and drove away like he did nothing.
Ugh.
After her death, her mother received calls from a man calling himself Bill, claiming he had photos of Susan.
Okay, this would have been back in the time where people had like an address book with phone numbers in it, so it's possible he just like stole her address book. But what kind of deranged motherfucker pulls that shit? That's so.
I mean, you could also look her up in the yellow pages, so like.
But that'd be like.
It could be someone prank calling.
Either way, that's disgusting.
It's fine.
I feel like the charge for pranking people like this should be, I don't want to say a felony, because I feel like that maybe brings felony down, but like, you should do some fucking jail time for that bullshit. That is, you are not fit to be around other people if you do that.
So, bringing us back. For around 40 years, this case went unsolved. For a while in 2018, police had suspected serial killer Anthony Shore, also known as the Tourniquet Killer. When Susan had been strangled with the bodysuit, it had been used as a tourniquet, which matched Shore's MO. Shore's death sentence had actually been postponed briefly in order to get his DNA to compare it to the DNA found on Susan.
I was gonna say though, do you really need to say his execution? You can get the DNA. You guys kill him. I'm just saying.
However, the DNA did positively match Arthur Raymond Davis Jr., a 35-year-old Vietnam War veteran and boat captain.
We actually have a solve for this one.
They were able to match this thanks to the cooperation of his son. This man matches the description and sketch of the cowboy hat-wearing man that she had been last seen with. And almost like karma, Davis had been killed only 4 months later, 4 months after killing Susan, in a car crash a mile away from where he had killed her.
That was her. She was like her ghost in the road and caused him to get in the car accident. Good. Die. I hope it took a while. I hope you laid there for a little bit. On the side of the road. Like how you there.
Yeah.
To wrap us up, to bring us to the total, this is a total of 16 bodies found in the same field between 1971 and 1983.
Yeah, they need to just do sweeps on this fucking. Ooh. At that point, you've got to just sweep the whole. Like, it's a massive undertaking, I know, but the amount of bodies that have just stumbled upon.
I mean, if you put enough people in there, not bodies, you can scope out the area well enough. But I look at the police and I go, a cab.
In the next episode, in part 3, we will discuss we'll be focusing on 4 victims who are actually the center of the Netflix documentary Crime Scene Texas Killing Fields, and then other victims that were found all the way up till 2016.
Damn, we talked about this last episode, I forgot, but yeah, you guys need to be doing sweeps.
I will say, this is a little bit of a spoiler for next time, but I'm just going to say it. The father of one of the 4 found later on in the 80s, he actually has this group that he calls Equisearch. They literally ride their horses around areas of forest and just sweep the area to see if they find anything.
This is, I feel, where that frontier cowboy village vigilante justice, if it's.
This is what cowboys are all about.
If they find somebody dumping a body or doing anything sketchy, I'm imagining a full cattle rope drag to the police station situation. And you know what? They would not be wrong for that. I'm just gonna say it. I would support it under those circumstances.
There was a case like that before. It's not really a case. Some guy tried to like rob a store, and this guy who is essentially a cowboy was like, I literally just came in here to get some stuff. And he called the police and he's like, I lassoed this guy and I tied him to a tree. Can you come pick him up? And they were like, you what? No, yeah, he literally like lassoed them because I think he was trying to steal a bike. And this guy's like, well, I'm not having any of that. Like, I can hold him back. So he literally lassos him and ties this guy to a tree, and he's calling the police like, hey, can you so I tied up a guy to a tree, can you come and get him? And they're like, you what? And he's like, yeah, can you just come get him? He was trying to like steal stuff. I just literally came in to get stuff for myself and my horse.
Was he on horseback when this occurred? Oh my god, yes.
I love this guy. Course. I love it.
Of course. I think this guy was like, oh, I'm speeding off on my bike. And he's like, not on my watch. I love cowboys and the concept of cowboys so much. Granted, I'm biased because my dad also loves cowboys because he had a phase where he watched a bunch of cowboy movies.
Knowing your
that's
dad, that's
besides
hilarious.
the point. We are getting off
topic. I love cowboys except for Arthur. Fuck that cowboy.
He loves cowboys.
Also, though, just with a final thing.
Okay.
Not Bill. He's not Cowboy Bill. Interesting.
Not Bill.
Also, maybe he just didn't use it. If he did do it,
faker.
maybe he just didn't use his real name. Totally possible.
So that is the end of this episode. In the last episode, I described our table as kind of being in the middle of that foresty, kind of ponded, watery area, really kind of like foggy, low light. I think very similar this time. Maybe there's a dog running around.
Welcome to the swamp.
He's
Welcome to the swamp. I'm kidding.
Would they have found them as soon as they did without him? That dog's a hero.
No, he deserves a Medal of Honor.
Fido, you have done so much for us, buddy.
Gender the dog was.
Good point, Fido. Bingo.
But that is the end of today's episode. And we'll see you guys in part 3. Stay safe and have a good one. Bye.
Yippee. Bye.